Who has the best roster in the NFL? Who has the worst? There was a list that ranked them all. We're going to give you the 3 teams that were rated too high and 3 teams that were rated too low on this list, and give you an update on the Deshaun Watson situation. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On NFL podcast, joined by your boy Q. Let's get into
it. You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Friday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's your boy Q, and we're ending the week on a strong note here. Q, how's it going?
Man, it's fantastic. It is another another week in the books. We're already into July now. Training camp's right around the corner, and sooner before you know it, man, we'll be talking about games. First preseason, then actual regular season games. So the calendar does not slow down for any man, and the NFL loves it this way, and so do we. So glad to be back on another Friday.
Absolutely here. So what we're going to start off with is, it's July now. It's officially July. So now it's the time for lists. It's the time for predictions and comparisons and all these other things, because all the teams are on vacation. They're doing their thing. But we're going to today look at a list done by Ben Linsey over on ESPN Plus. If you go there, Ben Linsey ranked all NFL rosters, strengths, weaknesses, and X factors based on their starting lineups. So this is like a look across the board, basically how Ben Linsey sees each roster stacking up against each other and who they are. Now, what we're going to do in the first segment here, we're going to give you the 3 teams that we think should be ranked higher, and the next segment we'll talk about the 3 teams that should be ranked lower here. But before we get to that, I want to give you a sense of what this list is. Again, go to ESPN.
Remember, Chris, Ben is from Pro Football Focus, right. So, it's very analytic driven. So let's just go ahead and throw it out there that it's very analytic driven because, every time we talk about rankings and stuff like that, sometimes numbers don't always match up. But remember, This is by analytics because he's from Pro Football Focus.
Right. And that's an important thing here. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of opinions about Pro Football Focus because they can be way out there with their takes sometimes. But I don't think this part was way out there. In fact, I think the top of their list wasn't way out there, even the top 5 or so. They have the number 1 roster in the NFL right now being the Buffalo Bills. Next, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 2, the Los Angeles Chargers at 3, the Los Angeles Rams at 4, and the Green Bay Packers at 5. I'm not too upset about that top 5. I think that's a pretty solid listing. Those are all 5 teams I expect to be competing for a Super Bowl this year.
No, I think those top 5 are fine. I mean, some may look at the Chargers and say they continue every single year to be talked about. And, hey, this is the year the Chargers are going to be this great team. And then somehow they find a way to charger it up. But on paper, this is what this is about, the roster, they do look really stacked.
They do look really stacked. They've added a lot of pieces. They were a team that everyone thought was going to be something like this last year. Just missed the playoffs on a crazy way to end the season, as you saw with the Raiders there. But this is where I think the list started to get funky. At number 6 in the NFL is the Cleveland Browns. And I'm like, whoa, okay, that's interesting. Then at number 7 is the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not sure how many people would have thought of that going in. And then at number 8 is the Cincinnati Bengals, who were just in the Super Bowl. Number 9 is the Kansas City Chiefs. Number 10 is the Miami Dolphins. That means outside of your top 10 is the 49ers, who were just in the NFC championship. You're looking at teams like that, teams that made the playoffs. The Baltimore Ravens, who a lot of people think will have a bounce back year. The Saints, who a lot of people are confident in. It's interesting to see that as your top 10. So we're not going to go through the whole list, but we are going to give you the 3 teams that we think, each of us, are ranked too low on this list and should be higher. Who's the first team on your list here, Q, that have been messed up?
That I think should be higher?
Yes.
I think that, and you mentioned them, and I'm going to shout out to them right away, the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that they need to be higher.
You try to get your protection in before they come after you.
Get that out of the way right now, damn it. Cincinnati. Do you hear me, Cincinnati? Jeez. Yeah, no, for real, though, just all jokes aside, I don't think that they should be ranked 8th. You looked at some of those in the top 7 and you say, yeah, there's a couple there. Matter of fact, I look at the Cleveland Browns and say, yeah, I got questions about them. Of course, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I look at the Cincinnati Bengals and think that they definitely deserve to be a little bit higher. They have a hell of an offense. We saw that. That's what fueled them to get to the Super Bowl. They have a defense that creates a bunch of turnovers. That's also what helped them get to the Super Bowl. And oh, by the way, this offseason they went out and improved their offensive line, which was their Achilles heel. So that, with all that being said, they definitely should be higher than number 8.
I do think that that's going to be very interesting to see that. I do think that the Bengals are, one of those teams. I didn't put them on my list though. Because I was like, I'm going to go.
Disrespectful.
Right, yes, totally. The Bengals fans are totally coming for me. They're going to cancel me. It's going to be all bad for me. But my first team that I think that they ranked way too low on this list was the Indianapolis Colts. And
Really?
I know the Colts are a team that didn't make the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
But I said back then, I think a lot of that was Carson Wentz. I think this is a team with a very strong offensive line. Jonathan Taylor was in MVP conversations towards the later part of the year. Their defense is talented. Darius Leonard's going to be back. They added Stephon Gilmore. This is a group that I think top to bottom, with now Matt Ryan at quarterback.
Is that you believe in him? You believe he's gonna take that next step?
I don't think that Matt Ryan is some godsend to them, but I do think that he is a balancing quarterback. I think Carson Wentz was that unreliable to be consistent, and I think Matt Ryan on a talented team. And again, I like Michael Pittman Jr. I think that he's done some really good things. I like the athleticism of Paris Campbell, and I loved Alec Pierce in the NFL draft.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that offense with Jonathan Taylor and Matt Ryan to kind of be the level-headed quarterback who can just kind of give you solid performance game in and game out. That's the type of play that makes this team a little bit better than where they're ranked at 15th overall on this list. So I have them being higher. Who's your second team that should be higher?
Well, they're right behind them, the number 16th ranked team in the Dallas Cowboys. And I know that Cowboy fans are going to say, yeah, but it's always a disappointment. They're always supposed to be so good. But on paper, and again, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about rosters. We're not talking about wins. We're not talking about schedules. We're not talking about coaches. We're talking about the roster. The Cowboys are stacked with talent. Now, are they going to put it all together? I don't know. But I could tell you that I feel that they have more talent than even the Indianapolis Colts, and that's not a disrespect to you, but I just look at, a team like the Colts and say, hey, the Cowboys, I think they have more talent than them. I think they have more talent than the Broncos. I think there's a few teams that I think they have more talent than. So I would definitely move the Cowboys up.
I would not have any complaints about that. They are a talented roster, but as you said about the Chargers, it was the Cowboys find some way to cowboy it up
exactly
when they have those talented rosters. At least they have for the last 25 years. All right. My second team here that I think should be higher is the Arizona Cardinals. And I know some people might bite my head off for this one, but I'm reaching down into the barrel. I'm not just picking stuff off the top.
Yeah.
Some deep level
They're
thinking
ranked
here.
really low, too. They're ranked really low.
They're ranked 23rd.
Yeah.
So you're talking about bottom of the league, wouldn't make the playoffs type of stuff. Right. I don't think Kyler Murray's that bad. I think he's actually pretty good of a quarterback. I think James Conner showed that he can be reliable. DeAndre Hopkins will be back. They added Marquise Brown as a secondary option, not the primary option. I think that's where he needs to be in an offense. You still got AJ Green, Zach Ertz. You have an offensive line, I think, that will hold together. You have a defense that is going to have talent. You still got JJ Watt, Zaven Collins, Isaiah Simmons. I like Byron Murphy as he's getting older. Buda Baker's still back there. I think this roster, which is listed at 23, it should be a little bit higher, boosted up a little bit, because I do think they're more of a playoff contender than this list would lead you to believe.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And I do like what Arizona does. I think that I'm a prisoner of what they do in the second half of seasons and how Kyler Murray performs the second half of season. But again, that's not what this is about. But, we get it caught up in our mind because we know the tendencies. Again, the list is about rosters. So to that, to that point, the roster, them being ranked higher makes a lot of sense. So I can't really disagree with you on that. I like that.
Who's your last team here that you think needs to be ranked higher on this list?
I'm going to go with the team that you overlooked because I saw you went all the way down to number 23. I'm going to stop at number 21. And I'm not trying to be a homer, but I think that the Raiders are being overlooked. I mean, you remember this was the 5th seed in the playoffs a year ago. And all they did is go out there and got Devontae Adams. And again, I know coaching staff doesn't matter. I believe their coaching is a lot better. But you go out there and get Devontae Adams. You go out there and make some other moves. You get Chandler Jones. I mean, you get all kind of other weapons. I don't think that you're the 12th ranked AFC team, and I sure don't think you're the 21st ranked roster in the NFL. So I just think that the Raiders are really being overlooked as far as this list goes. So I would definitely move them up.
I feel you. And it's funny you said I overlooked the Raiders with my last pick. You're going to think that I overlooked this other team then, because they're right below the Raiders on this list, listed at number 22, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I'm pretty sure everyone's
Oh,
going
why
to be
didn't
like,
you go in numerical order?
because I wanted to mess with you. That's why. I knew you wouldn't see this coming. But totally, we're both being homers here because these are the two teams that we cover. But my reasoning for why I think the Steelers should be higher than 22 is last year the Steelers made the playoffs with their defensive line being decimated, their quarterback situation. Ben Roethlisberger had no cannon of an arm. He was down to his last year. Their linebacker situation was toast. Devin Bush couldn't read. He couldn't do much off of a knee that he was still recovering from an ACL injury. Joe Schobert was kind of meh. They added Miles Jack, who will be better at that. Devin Bush has, all through minicamp and OTAs, he looked like the Devin Bush before he got injured, which was a pretty good linebacker. They added Larry Ogunjobi. Cam Hayward's back. Tyson Alualu's back. They added younger pieces to the defensive line to Marvin Leal. And this offense, honestly, I know Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett and everyone's saying, oh, what are they going to be? They're going to be better than Ben Roethlisberger was last year because they're going to be able to just stretch the field a little bit more. That's where I see this being like hey, that team was 9-7-1 last year with Ben Roethlisberger at the helm, the worst rushing defense in the NFL, and all these other problems that came with it. You're taking away those problems. They've added pieces to the offensive line. They've added a new young receiver in George Pickens. They've got younger quarterbacking. They've got a defense that should be more together, and they have a slew of veteran cornerbacks, along with Minkah Fitzpatrick, the reigning defensive MVP, and TJ Watt, and multiple-time All-Pros and Cam Hayward, Minkah Fitzpatrick. To me, that team is a better than 22. I'm not saying way up into the top 10, but I'm saying they should definitely be up there a bit more, just like the Raiders should be.
I can see that. I think my biggest hangup is the Mitchell Trubisky, Kenny Pickett scenario.
We don't know what they're going to be like. I feel
right, exactly. So that's just kind of my hangup there. But every other part of the team that you just broke down makes a lot of sense. So I can see them being higher than 22nd. I think as far as the AFC goes, I think the Raiders, like I said, was 21st, and then the Steelers were 22nd, and then there's two other teams AFC wise, and that was it. Yeah, it was the
Jets and the Jaguars.
No, the Jaguars and the Texans for the AFC.
The Jets, Jaguars, Texans. They were all three of the AFC teams that were lower.
That's right.
They were the only other three AFC teams that were lower than the Steelers and the Raiders.
Right. So there you go. I mean, I don't think that
we're talking that
Steelers or the Raiders are in the category with the other teams that we just mentioned, the Jets, the Jaguars, and the Texans. I just think they're way more talent than that.
I agree. That's why we're pumping both of these guys up. Now we got to go over we've made some fan bases happy with these with this. We're gonna make some fan bases mad with the next one of the three teams each of us think should be ranked lower. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, we got to talk to you guys about BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball, which is now the only thing going on that's in the major sporting world. It's tough, Q, because now we don't got the NBA finals. We don't got the Stanley Cup finals. It's now that part of the season where if you're a sports junkie, you're hurting because you're like, man, there's only one sport that I can rely on. But how do you get through that time? You put money down. You make it more fun for yourself. You make some money so that when football season comes, you're up going into football season. And the best way to do that is to learn about all the trends, the action, the odds from betonline.net, your continued source for all your sports wagering information from live betting, playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action when you visit BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back here on the Friday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's your boy Q. And we're time to go for the three teams that Ben Linsey should have ranked lower on his ranking, all of the 32 NFL rosters. This is going to be aggressive. Q, we did prep and talk about our lists. We have the same team as the top team that should be ranked lower here. It's the Cleveland Browns, being ranked at 6th overall as far as a roster. I'm with you. This team, listen, I get that there's excitement and that if you took away all the Deshaun Watson noise and all the stuff that we are going to talk about later in this show, maybe you'd put them in that conversation. But I'm sorry, this team missed the playoffs last year, probably won't have Deshaun Watson this year, or at least for a big chunk of this year. And they still got a lot of things to answer for. I can't see them as a top 10 team right now.
Well, I mean, that's just it. The Deshaun Watson situation, you don't know when he's going to be out there, so you can't factor him in. right?
Right.
I mean, and so right now your quarterback is what, Jacoby Brissett
Right.
or who was the young man that was in Pittsburgh?
Oh, Josh Dobbs. Yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot that he's the fourth
yeah,
option.
exactly. So there you go. You got Brissett or Dobbs, and so no disrespect to either one of those guys, but they don't strike fear in anybody,
Nope.
right, at all. So yeah, Deshaun Watson, if he's in the mix and everything is clear, and you don't have to worry about a suspension, sure, they have a really good roster. But the most important guy is the trigger man, and they
Yep.
don't have that trigger man. I
Nope.
know Baker Mayfield's currently there, but he's not currently there, if you know what I mean. So I mean, there's that. I just that's why I can't put him at a top 10 team, just being with all those question marks that you have with the quarterback situation.
Yeah, I'm right with you there because again, they got questions there. I'm still want to see more from their defense. Like, again, the Steelers defense with all the problems they had at quarterback and the other things, and still not being able to stop the run, their pass rush was able to make up for that. They found ways to gut out games. I'm not sure the Browns can do that this year with all the questions. And even if Deshaun Watson comes back at some point in the season, that
Right.
dark cloud is going to hover over them, and that to me, that comes with him being on the roster. So when you're talking about guys on paper, that's an asterisk that I put on that team right away. Now our second teams are a little different here. I went with the Dolphins, but you went for the Broncos. I went with the Dolphins because they were ranked number 10. I actually think the Dolphins will be competitive this year. I just don't know about the 10th best roster in the NFL. That to me feels a little strong, namely because Chase Edmonds is an okay backup running back. We still got to see more from Tua. Very excited about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Cedric Wilson as a trio of wide receivers.
Yeah.
I think that they've done a good job. They went and got Teron Armstead, even though he's a little bit older. But I still look around the roster and I don't see the overall strength across the board. I think they might have the best combination of wide receivers and cornerbacks. When you look at Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and then Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, I think if you were to take a quartet of wide receivers and corners from any NFL team, they might have the best at that. But the
Right.
problem that I have with the Dolphins roster that makes them, they shouldn't be top 10 is the rest of the roster. And I don't think that they fit into that category.
Well, they added a lot of talents this offseason, so I'll give them that. They went out there and made a strong effort to go ahead and surround Tua with as much talent as possible. You already named off all the guys, but address the offensive line as well, address the running back and the fullback position. And then, of course, Coach McDaniel comes over from the San Francisco 49ers and is expected to be a pretty big X factor for them. Now, again, the coaching staff does not equivalent into this conversation about rosters. So my big question with the Dolphins is the trigger man. It goes back to Tua. And so I want to believe that Tua is going to be really good, but I just have to see it. So I can totally understand why you'd want to move them down from 10, get them out of the top 10, just because there is that question mark hovering over Tua's head.
But see, you want to take a team that's not in the top 10, a team that's actually ranked 14th, and bump them down lower. Do you have a problem with the Denver Broncos trigger man? Because that's Russell Wilson.
No, but I have the problem with the rest of the team. They have Russell Wilson, and then what else? They had to give up quite a bit to go get.
Don't tell Cody he's gonna come for you, man.
Oh, hey, I know, and there's a lot of hype around Denver about how great they're going to be. But they had Vic Fangio a year ago as their coach, and he's a defensive guru, and one of the best in the league. And they don't have that now. And they have Nathaniel Hackett, who is a first-time head coach. And again, we're talking about the roster, but when I just look up and down the roster, I see some holes on the offensive line. I know that they have nice edge rushers. I get that. They have some good corners. I get that as well. But I just want to see how everything comes together. And I just feel like there's a lot of questions. Russell Wilson is not the same Russell Wilson that he was when he was winning the Super Bowl in Seattle. But again, that had other elements. Last year, he was banged up quite a bit. So I like the acquisition of Wilson. I'm just not sure how quickly it's going to come together. So I wouldn't rank them at 14th already because, well, they haven't shown anything either. So really, I took the Cowboys and I replaced them. I had him in the segment where we were talking about the teams that should be higher. The Cowboys were in at 16. The Broncos were at 14. I took the Cowboys and basically swapped them with the Broncos. So I just moved them down a few spots.
Okay, so not like they're crazily
not
ranked.
A massive, not a massive, drop, but I just don't think that 14 is high enough. And honestly, I could even go a step further and say I would take the Raiders over the Broncos roster right now. And that's just on the strength of Devontae Adams being the best wide receiver in the league. I mean, straight
there
up.
You go. No, that's fair. That's fair. The last team that we want to talk about, though, is a team that we agree about, and it's the Washington Commanders. Yeah. Now they weren't ranked. I don't think that they were ranked egregiously, like ridiculously high, but still at 17. the same problem that I said was for the Colts last year is now their problem. And that's Carson Wentz.
Right.
I just and I love Terry McLaurin. I think that
Yeah.
he's a heck of a player. I think Jahan
Agreed.
Dotson's going to be a fine NFL wide receiver, but I got questions about your offensive line. I like Deron Payne, and I think what they're trying to do at defensive line could be something good there with Jonathan Allen. Chase Young, of course, is there. Montez Sweat, but linebacker questions, secondary questions. This is a team, this is a roster that I think that they'll win games. They'll be competitive. They'll push towards like the playoffs, but they're one of those teams that like I'm dropping below the Raiders, I'm dropping below the Steelers, I'm dropping below the Titans, I'm dropping below the Cardinals. I'm putting them they're on the upper tier of that tier of teams that we were talking about, like the Jets and the Jaguars and those two. Like they're on the cusp between that and like the next tier of teams, but they are not a team that I see as a complete roster that should be in the top 20 in the NFL.
I saw Carson Wentz a year ago look too much like a shortstop where he would throw the ball and bounce it into first base, right? I mean, it's just and that doesn't work in the NFL. You've got to complete the pass. You can't drop it off the turf and then into the receiver's hands. That's not going to work. I just don't trust Carson Wentz at all. I think this is going to be a bad experiment in Washington with him. I think this is probably his last team that he's on as far as a starting quarterback, and then maybe he'll go and be a backup somewhere after that. So with that, I just can't trust him. I don't know about Deron Payne. I like him a lot. I don't know if he's in the plans for Washington.
But that's part of it too, is that he might not be there. He's on his fifth.
He could be on the way out,
Right. Yes.
So who knows? I do like the defensive pressure that they can create. They've been really strong defensively, but I just have way too many questions on that Washington offensive side of the ball. So, I can't see him at number 17. Again, I would drop him down in the lower 20s, just like you would. So there you go. My team's moving down: the Browns, the Broncos, and Washington. My team's moving up: the Bengals, the Cowboys, and the Raiders. Simple as that.
Teams I got moving up: Colts, Cardinals, and Steelers. Teams I got moving down: Browns, Dolphins, Commanders. A little bit of similarity there in the down department. We each gave basically 6 whole teams here that we think are better on this list. Let us know if you think we're crazy either way at your boy Q254 for Q, at Carter Critiques for me.
Oh, they will.
Oh man, like trust me,
they'll let us know.
They'll let us know. And the reason, like we were joking about the Bengals fans, if you're new to this show, Bengals fans, whenever we slight the Bengals, if we just say they're not the greatest team of all time, Bengals fans, you're disrespecting us, and we're just like, everybody, calm down. Like it's just we're going over lists and we're giving our opinions, and we're just like, hey, we'll see. But anyways, we got to take another break. When we come back, we do have to update y'all on the Deshaun Watson situation because the hearings have concluded. It's decision time for what's going down. We'll give you all the notes right here in the Locked On NFL podcast right after this. Back here on the Locked On NFL podcast, the Friday edition with Chris Carter and your boy Q. Okay, Q, seems like we do this every week now, giving people updates on Deshaun Watson's, but it is the major news story really of the NFL every week. It's the reason why both of us thought that the Browns should be lower, because neither you or I think that he's coming out of this clean. Now, we do know that Deshaun Watson agreed to conditional settlements with 20 of the 24 accusers. There's still 4 accusers out there that don't want to settle, that they're not done with this. But the disciplinary hearings were done, were completed in front of former judge Sue Robinson. She's those hearings concluded Thursday, and now it's coming down to a question of how this is going to get played out. Now, according to NFL.com, the post-hearing briefs for this situation are due by July 11th. So we still got time. Like we're still gonna be talking about this next week. This isn't going to be settled within the next week or so. But this is my opinion, Q. I think that the NFL, they look at this, they see the blemish that this still has in the NFL, unless something crazy pops up, some evidence that we didn't know about that helps Deshaun Watson's side. I don't think that happened. I don't think that evidence is out there. I think the NFL is going to put him on some sort of exempt list or indefinite suspension before training camp that opens on July 26th.
Yeah, this is the thing, and this is really one of those tough cases to really break down because we've heard so many rumors and reports. But when the disciplinary hearing was going on, we didn't hear anything, right? Because they made
Right.
sure that there was nothing that got out. So I think that this is going to be drug out. I really do. I think it's going to take a while. I thought it was going to get, come to a conclusion before training camp. I think that that'd be the right way to make sure everything happens before training camp. But I'm not too sure, man. I feel like that this is going to drag out. As you mentioned, we don't have to hear anything till July 11th. But then you're going to get appeals. You're going to get, it's going to be so many different situations that I believe are going to pop up. It's just, it feels like it's going to drag on for a while. And the thing is, the NFL has to get this right. You know what I mean? Because of the severity of the issue, like it can't be something that people look at and we're talking about saying, well, that was a slap on the wrist. That was nothing.
Yeah.
Like that can't be the case. It's almost one of those where you have to over punish,
Right.
just for the sake of we better make sure we get this right. So that's why I think that this is such a sticky situation and that they've really got to break it down and almost take their time on what they're going to do here. I believe, and I've been in the belief that it's going to be a whole year suspension. I don't think he's going to play until the 2023 season. But then there's going to be arguments about, well, what about ownership that hasn't gotten in trouble for anything? They're part of the
And
CBA, and they're not wrong.
and listen, the fact that there are owners, including the Dan Snyder hearings, which are still going on right now,
Right.
the fact that there are owners that it does not exonerate Deshaun Watson. However, it does bring into question, hey, Robert Kraft was caught on tape
Right.
doing all sorts of crazy stuff with women who were being trafficked.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been pushed to the back. We don't hear about it anymore. He never got punished. He never had to give up his team, nothing like that.
Right.
So I get that argument. And if your argument is, hey, we still need to go after those guys, absolutely. But if your argument is, well, then if they don't get punished, Deshaun Watson shouldn't get punished, I ain't with you. Now, does that mean that there's disparity and there's not, that's not being treated equal? Absolutely.
Right.
But what Deshaun Watson, what we have been told, if what we know to be true or what we've
Right.
heard to be true on this situation is still there, that does not what other people got away with does not excuse what Deshaun Watson has
Right.
been alleged to have done. So I look at this situation and the NFL, this is a lot louder because this guy, when Bob Kraft is the owner of the Patriots, he's the owner, he's in the box. You don't see him on
Right.
the field. He's not the face of the team. Deshaun Watson is if he plays, he's the face of the Browns. He's the superstar quarterback that's going to be leading a team that some people think are one of the top 10 teams in the NFL if he plays.
Right.
And if he's out there throwing touchdowns and your highlight and you got to do his highlights, and then he's making plays on Monday Night Football, and people are thinking, what is this? What is this message? That is a lot louder than the ownership. And again, I'm not justifying them not
Right.
punishing the owners for what they've been part of. I'm just saying this is something that the NFL is absolutely going to crack down on before those other things. And bringing those up as an excuse for Deshaun Watson isn't the right move. Bringing it up as a reason for why to punish other people, that's where I think it's more reasonable.
Well, the thing about it is we know that the owners and the players go by different rules, right? And the
Absolutely.
owners, they pay Roger Goodell. I mean, Roger Goodell works for the ownership. So, I mean, there's reasons why when you look at Daniel Snyder and his case that's going on in D.C. with the congressional hearings and everything, it's a different ball game. So,
Yes, it is.
I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying that that's what it is, And I've always said that as long as you know the rules, even if they're not the right rules, you have a chance, right? You got to know what the rules are, and unfortunately for the players, they don't have the same set of rules as the ownership does. So to go and say, well, this guy, he didn't get punished for this, that, and the other, that's never seemed to work for me, right? You can never point at someone else and say, well, his punishment was this, that, and the other. Yeah, well, we're not worried about him. We're worried about you. So that's the case. So I just think that this is going to be one of those that is going to be a very hefty punishment. I think it should be a very hefty punishment. Do I think the ownership should be held responsible for their issues? Yeah, sure. But again, we know the game. We know that it's not like that. So
We know the game.
this is going to be something that we're going to continue to update because it's going to continue to develop. Again, even when we hear the initial ruling, we know that that's not it. It's going to be more that's going to come down from that as far as either appeals or whatever they decide to do. And I'm not a legal expert, so I don't even know the next 2 or 3 steps. I just know that there's going to be another 2 or 3 steps following the initial ruling. So buckle up. It's the summer of Watson. And when I mean that not in a flattering way. I mean in that we're paying attention to see what happens with them.
No, okay, but basically, because I am a law grad, I will say basically there.
Why you raise your hand, man? You gotta raise your hand so we can call on you. Mr. Carter, can you please speak?
Yeah, actually, Your Honor. But seriously, the whole point of the post hearing briefs, basically, the evidence has been laid out before this judge.
Right.
Now these two sides have to argue their sides, and they're going to submit their briefs. There's probably going to be another, argumentative period, and then that's what's going to lead to the decision. And that's why don't expect anything new right now, but just updating on what the situation is. That's where they're at. I guess what they call, the bring in your evidence forward. Both sides have now brought all that forward. Now it's just about making their points to say, hey, this is what precedent has
Right.
been set. This is what's actually happened. This is why the judge should side with us over the other side on what the punishment should be, or if there should even be a punishment. So
Right.
we'll see how that plays out in the NFL. Either way, it's going to be a huge story when it does finalize, and I expect that to come the next few weeks. Not this next week, not next week, but
Right.
I'm saying in like maybe 2 or 3 weeks. That's when we start to see a resolution after the 11th. But anyways,
That's why you keep a lawyer on standby, right? To break those kind of
exactly.
things down.
Exactly. We got little breakdowns like that we got when legal stuff is going on. But hey, the Friday edition, we're gonna try to keep things a little bit lighter. That's why we do these lists. That's why we do these debates about who should be higher, who should
Right.
be lower, play cap or no cap. But we do got to get to the serious stuff because we don't run away from that here. We run to it. We want to get you guys our opinions and updates on what's going on there. Thanks again for checking out the Locked On NFL podcast. As always, you can find it on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, YouTube, anywhere podcasts are hosted. Q, let people know they can find you, follow you, get more of your work.
Man, everything you can find is on Twitter at your boy Q254. It's real simple. Cincinnati Bengal fans are really good at finding me on Twitter and identifying me. So at your boy Q254, any other fan base that I may have pissed off, DMs are always open. Shout me out. Always love and appreciate all the feedback. How about you?
Absolutely. Do check Q out and do go after him before you go after me, because it seems like a lot of people do sometimes. Like they're just like, we're just gonna attack Q. And then sometimes like I'll just fall back to ice. Like there's times that we say the exact same things and people go after you. And I'm like, they're not coming for me today. That's good.
Right.
That's good.
Right. I got it.
But but of course you can hear Q over on Locked On Raiders, just like you hear him right here every Friday. But again, I'm Chris Carter. You can find me on the Locked On Steelers podcast, just like you find Q on Locked On Raiders, the same way that you found this podcast, whether YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, anywhere podcasts are hosted. You can also find me on SteelersNow.com, where I write about the Pittsburgh Steelers and breaking things down there. So check me out. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques, where I'm always giving my thoughts, putting my articles. Basically the same thing as Q. If you want to find my work, most likely you'll find me there. So thanks again to everyone who checked this out. We'll be back next week with more on your Locked On your Locked On NFL podcast. Hope you have a great 4th of July weekend. Have some cookouts, enjoy some sun, have a good time. And then we'll be back next week to get you ready and keep you going, because then we'll be only a couple weeks away from training camp, and that'll be fun.
Buddy.